Chapter 7. Chapter 3 comes true. The morning after the bidding war, Ethan woke to sunlight streaming through his apartment windows and the lingering scent of champagne. His head throbbed dully, a souvenir from the celebratory drinks Clara had insisted on after the deal was finalized. $1 million. The number still felt unreal, hovering in his consciousness like a fever dream. He reached for his phone, squinting at the screen. 3 missed calls from Clara, a congratulatory text from his ex-girlfriend Allie, Clara must have told her, and dozens of notifications from literary Twitter. Word of the deal had leaked. His name was trending in publishing circles. A text from Daniel Price caught his eye. Congrats on the deal. Hard to believe you had this in you. Looking forward to reading what warranted 7 figures. The thinly veiled skepticism was typical of his former friend turned literary rival. Ethan deleted it with a swipe of his thumb, though a flicker of satisfaction rose through his hangover. Let Daniel sneer. Soon he'd be forced to acknowledge Ethan's success. The image of Daniel's face when The Weight of Words topped bestseller lists sent a surprising thrill through him, one that made him pause, unsettled by his own vindictiveness. As he set down his phone, Ethan caught his reflection in the window. Something about his appearance seemed altered. Not dramatically, but noticeably. His skin looked waxier, paler, and tiny blue veins were visible at his temples that he'd never noticed before. Probably just the hangover and poor sleep. Ethan sat up too quickly, wincing as his headache sharpened. On his nightstand sat a glass of water and 2 aspirin he had no memory of placing there. Beside them was a folded note written in handwriting that wasn't his, elegant loops and sharp angles that reminded him of Maslow's script. The price is set. The wheels now turn. His pulse quickened. The paper felt unnaturally cold between his fingers, as if it had been stored in ice. When he crumpled it, the note seemed to resist, stiffening like cartilage before yielding. He tossed it across the room, then swallowed the aspirin with a shaking hand. Just a prank. Or something he'd written himself while drunk and didn't remember. It had to be. The bathroom mirror revealed a ghost, pale skin, bloodshot eyes, a smear of dried blood at the edge of his left nostril. As he washed his hands, he noticed something new. Faint black stains beneath his fingernails, like ink that wouldn't wash away no matter how hard he scrubbed. Ethan splashed cold water on his face, trying to wash away the unease that clung to him like a film. "It's done," he told his reflection. "The book sold. It's yours now." His reflection stared back, unconvinced. For a fraction of a second, he could have sworn the reflection's eyes remained fixed while his own moved away. A microsecond of desynchronization that sent a fresh wave of nausea through him. "Did this happen to Maslow too?" he whispered, remembering the journal entries he'd found at the estate. The increasingly erratic handwriting, the paranoia that had crept into the author's final days. Was he simply repeating a pattern begun decades ago, becoming another vessel for whatever power resided in those pages? The thought both terrified and thrilled him. If the manuscript had consumed Maslow, it had also granted him literary reverence, a cult following that had endured decades after his death. Perhaps there were worse fates than becoming a conduit for such dark brilliance. Clara's office was a whirlwind of activity when Ethan arrived that afternoon. Her assistant handed him a steaming latte without asking and ushered him into the inner sanctum where Clara paced, phone to ear, gesturing animatedly. The office smelled of fresh flowers and expensive perfume, undercut by the acrid tang of spilled printer toner, the familiar scent of literary business. "Yes, absolutely, we can do that," she was saying. "Ethan just walked in. I'll discuss it with him and get back to you." She hung up and turned to him, face flushed with triumph. That was Harper. They want a fast-track publication, 6 months. They're talking major push, national tour, morning shows, the works. Ethan sank into a chair, his legs suddenly unsteady. The leather creaked beneath him, unnaturally loud in his ears. 6 months? Isn't that unusually fast? For a literary debut of this caliber? Yes, but they're calling it the most important horror novel of the decade and want to capitalize on the buzz. She sat across from him, eyes bright with excitement. "This is it, Ethan. The breakthrough we've been waiting for." He nodded mechanically, trying to match her enthusiasm. But all he could think about was the note on his nightstand, the blood on his pillow, the words typing themselves when he wasn't looking. the stolen brilliance that was never his to claim. "There's something else," Clara said, her tone shifting. "Sasha Lynn wants to review an advance copy." Ethan frowned, the name vaguely familiar. "Sasha Lynn?" "The book blogger who runs the Midnight Reader. She's become the most influential voice in literary horror," Clara explained, sliding a printout across her desk. Ethan glanced down at a photo of a young Asian American woman with an infectious smile, black framed glasses, and a shock of purple in her otherwise dark hair. She stood in front of a wall of meticulously arranged bookshelves, a coffee mug that read, "The night is dark and full of terrors," clutched in her hands. 2 million subscribers, Clara continued. She single-handedly boosted Merrick's sales by 40% with her review last year. Her endorsement could double our first-week numbers. A faint memory stirred, a passage from the manuscript from what was now Chapter 3 of The Weight of Words. A female reviewer found impaled after posting a glowing review. The reviewer's name in the manuscript was Sophie Lee. When would she need it? Ethan's mouth felt suddenly dry. That's the thing. She's leaving for a month-long trip to Japan next week. She wants to read it before she goes, post the review to coincide with the official announcement. Clara leaned forward, the fluorescent lights catching the silver strands in her dark hair. "I sent her the first 3 chapters. She's obsessed. Called it a masterpiece of existential dread." Her words. The room seemed to tilt. Ethan gripped the arms of his chair to stay upright. The leather felt like skin beneath his fingers. Warm, yielding, almost alive. "You okay?" Clara frowned. "You look pale, like you've seen a ghost." "Or written one into existence," a voice whispered in his mind. "Just processing." He forced a smile. "Of course, send it to her." "Already did. She's reading it this weekend." Clara stood, moving to her desk. "Now we need to discuss the publicity plan. They want to schedule a photo shoot next." Ethan stopped listening. For the first time, he found himself mentally revisiting the exact passage from Maslow's manuscript, the one describing Sophie Lee's death. He'd typed it himself, had marveled at the visceral quality of the prose, the way it made him feel both horrified and complicit, but he'd never considered it might be predictive. The names were different, he reassured himself. Sophie Lee, Sasha Lynn, similar but not identical. Coincidence. It had to be. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, images from the manuscript flashed in his mind. A moonlit iron fence, a body arching in midair, the sickening sound of metal penetrating flesh. He opened his laptop at 2 a.m. and navigated to Sasha Lynn's blog, The Midnight Reader. The site was sleek and professional, with an aesthetic that balanced literary sophistication with horror elements. Her latest post was a thoughtful analysis of trauma narratives in modern fiction. Reading through her archive, Ethan began to develop a picture of the woman behind the reviews. Smart, incisive, with a wicked sense of humor that appeared in unexpected places. She'd started the blog during graduate school, where she was studying comparative literature at NYU. Her background in literary theory gave her reviews unusual depth, but she wrote with an accessibility that had built her massive following. A sidebar featured upcoming events, including a literary horror happy hour at the Morgan Hotel's rooftop bar that weekend. The coincidence made Ethan's stomach clench. In the manuscript, Sophie Lee left a similar event, tipsy from champagne, and stumbled near a decorative fence. I should warn her, he thought wildly. I should tell her to stay away from railings, from hotels, from me. But what would he say? That he'd plagiarized a novel predicting her death? That he was having delusions? His stolen manuscript was rewriting reality? His buzzing phone startled him from his thoughts. An email from Sasha Lynn herself. Mr. Cole, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to thank Clara for sending your manuscript. I'm already halfway through and utterly captivated. Your exploration of literary theft and moral compromise is unlike anything I've encountered. The way you build dread is masterful. I'd love to interview you alongside my review. Perhaps at the literary horror event I'm hosting this Friday at the Morgan. Several industry people will be there. It could be a good opportunity for early buzz. Looking forward to hearing from you, Sasha Lynn. The air left Ethan's lungs in a rush. The timing, the location, everything aligning with horrifying precision. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling. He began typing a response to dissuade her, to suggest meeting somewhere else. anywhere else. But as he wrote, the words on the screen began changing. Letters rearranged themselves into a different message entirely. Sasha, I'd be delighted to attend. Looking forward to discussing the novel with you, especially Chapter 3. Warm regards, Ethan. No. He tried to delete the message, but his finger hit send instead. A confirmation appeared. Your message has been sent successfully. The cursor blinked mockingly. The manuscript was taking control, ensuring events unfolded as written. A wave of helplessness washed over him, followed by the first inkling that he might be responsible for something terrible. Over the next 2 days, Ethan made 3 desperate attempts to contact Sasha. First, he tried emailing again, but his message bounced back with an auto-reply. I'm deep in readings, review mode, and checking messages infrequently. See you at the Morgan. Next, he attempted to find her phone number through literary contacts, without success. Finally, he messaged her blog's official social accounts, only to receive responses from her assistant saying Sasha was on deadline. Each failure increased his anxiety. By Friday morning, Ethan sat in his apartment surrounded by crumpled papers, his laptop open to the Morgan Hotel's website, studying the building's exterior, searching for the iron fence mentioned in the manuscript. There it was, ornate Victorian-style ironwork surrounding the perimeter, each post topped with a decorative finial. As he studied the photos, a small voice in the back of his mind questioned his urgency. If he somehow prevented Sasha's accident, would the publishers still want his book? Would the $1 million deal evaporate? A wave of self-loathing washed over him as he realized part of him, a dark, desperate part, was calculating the professional cost of saving a woman's life. What am I becoming? He whispered, appalled by his own thoughts. The day passed in a blur of dread. Ethan alternated between pacing and staring at his phone, hoping for a message saying the event was canceled. None came. At 6 p.m., he received a text from Clara, heading to the Morgan to meet Sasha. She's already read the whole manuscript. Says it's transformative. You coming? His hands trembled as he typed, Don't go. Tell her to reschedule. Clara's response came instantly. Just don't go. Please. Are you okay? Too late anyway, I'm already here. Join us. 14th floor rooftop. Ethan grabbed his coat, fumbling with the buttons as panic surged through him. He caught a glimpse of himself in the hallway mirror. Haggard, wild-eyed, the black stains beneath his fingernails now extending to the first knuckle of each finger. Not dirt, not conventional ink, something else. Something that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his racing heart. He ran the 6 blocks to the Morgan, the winter air burning in his lungs, each exhale forming a cloud that disappeared too quickly in the darkness. Night had fallen early, turning Madison Avenue into a canyon of neon and shadow. The hotel's elegant facade loomed ahead, windows gleaming like eyes. The decorative iron fence surrounded the perimeter, exactly as shown on the website, exactly as described in the manuscript. Ethan paused, breathing heavily, staring up at the rooftop bar 14 stories above. Muted music and laughter drifted down, ghostly and distant. As he approached the entrance, the lights along the hotel's exterior flickered momentarily, as if responding to his presence. A cold gust of wind circled him, unnaturally localized, causing nearby pedestrians to look around in confusion. For a moment, Ethan could have sworn the iron fence posts elongated, their decorative finials sharpening to more menacing points before settling back to their original form. I can stop this, he told himself. I can change what's written. In the lobby, he rushed to the elevator, jabbing the button repeatedly. The doors closed with agonizing slowness. As the elevator climbed, Ethan's reflection in the polished brass wall looked wrong somehow, slightly distorted, as if viewed through rippling water. The black stains on his fingers seemed to move beneath his skin. The rooftop bar was crowded with New York's literary elite, editors, agents, reviewers, all clustered in groups, drinks in hand, voices raised to be heard over the ambient music. Heat lamps combated the February chill, creating pockets of warmth in the otherwise cold night air. Ethan scanned the crowd frantically. Where was she? Where was Clara? He spotted them near the bar, Clara in her trademark black blazer, and beside her, Sasha Lynn, more vibrant in person than in her photos. She wore a vintage dress with a modern leather jacket, her purple-streaked hair pulled back, those distinctive black glasses perched on her nose. She was gesturing animatedly, describing something to Clara with infectious enthusiasm. As Ethan approached, fragments of their conversation reached him through the noise of the crowd. "Way he builds tension is extraordinary," Sasha was saying. "That scene with the critic, God, it felt so real, I nearly had a panic attack reading it. I can't remember the last time a book affected me so physically." Clara noticed him first. "Ethan, you made it. Sasha was just telling me how much she loved the manuscript." "My God, what happened to you?" she added in a lower voice as he approached. "You look different." Sasha turned, her face lighting up with recognition. "Ethan Cole, I'm so honored you came." She extended her hand. "Your novel kept me up for 2 straight nights. I've already written most of my review. I'm calling it a modern masterpiece." As they shook hands, she tilted her head, studying him with a critic's precision. "You look exactly how I imagined from your writing. There's something haunted about you. It suits the creator of The Weight of Words." Her hand felt warm and solid in his, so terribly alive. A knot formed in Ethan's throat. Up close, he saw the enthusiasm in her eyes, the slight flush in her cheeks from the cold, or perhaps the cocktail in her other hand. "Thank you for reading it," he managed, his voice rough. "Reading it? I devoured it," she laughed. "I've already told my followers to pre-order. This book is going to change your life." "And end yours," he thought, with rising horror. As she spoke, Ethan's mind flashed back to his Brooklyn apartment, to the moment he'd transcribed the pivotal scene from Maslow's manuscript. He remembered how his fingers had flown across the keyboard, how the words had seemed to flow through him rather than from him. Sophie Lee left the rooftop celebration dizzy with champagne and literary excitement. Her review was already composed in her mind, rapturous, career-defining. The wrought iron fence that surrounded the perimeter caught the moonlight as she paused to check her phone. One misstep, one moment of inattention, was all it took. Her body arched like a question mark as she fell, the decorative iron finial answering with brutal finality. He'd admired the passage for its visceral quality, the poetic brutality, never once considering it might be prophecy rather than fiction. "Listen," he began urgently, "I need to talk to you about—" A waiter appeared with a tray of champagne flutes. "Compliments of the publisher," he announced, handing glasses to Clara and Sasha. "To the weight of words," Clara toasted, raising her glass. "The book everyone will be talking about." "To authentic horror," Sasha added, clinking her glass against Clara's before turning to Ethan. "You've created something truly special." Guilt crashed over Ethan in waves. This vibrant, intelligent woman was praising work he'd stolen, work that somehow predicted her death. The black stains on his fingers throbbed painfully, as if responding to his shame. "You look troubled," Sasha observed, her critic's eye missing nothing. "Is something wrong?" "Don't," Ethan started, then stopped. How could he explain? "Don't go near the edge of the roof, the railings. Just be careful tonight." Sasha raised an eyebrow, amused. "That's cryptic. Very on brand for a horror writer." She gestured toward the edge of the rooftop where people gathered to admire the city lights. "Afraid I'll fall? Those barriers are regulation height." "Please," Ethan said, his voice cracking. "I have a bad feeling." Clara shot him a concerned look. "Ethan, are you okay? You're acting strange." Before he could respond, Sasha's phone chimed. She checked it, frowning. "I need to take this. My editor about the Japan trip. Back in a minute." She moved away toward a quieter corner near the service entrance, phone pressed to her ear. "What is wrong with you?" Clara hissed once Sasha was out of earshot. "You're being weird, and you look terrible. Are you sick?" "The manuscript," Ethan began, struggling to find words that wouldn't sound insane. Chapter 3. The Reviewer Who Dies. Clara's expression softened. "Is that what this is about? You're freaking out because your fictional character shares superficial similarities with Sasha?" She squeezed his arm. "Ethan, you need sleep. You're overthinking this. You don't understand," he insisted. "It's happening exactly like—" A commotion erupted near the service area. Someone screamed. Then another voice called for help. Everything slowed. Sound compressed to a distant echo as Ethan turned, already knowing what he would see, already feeling the weight of responsibility settling over him like a shroud. A small crowd was gathering near the service door where Sasha had gone. Staff members rushed past, their faces tight with urgency. A security guard appeared, radio in hand, speaking rapid codes into the receiver. Ethan moved forward as if underwater, each step requiring monumental effort against an invisible current. Clara followed, confusion giving way to concern. "What's happening?" she asked a bartender rushing past with a first aid kit. "Woman fell," he answered without stopping. "Service stairwell, hit her head." Relief washed over Ethan. A fall, a stairwell, not a fence, not fatal. The manuscript was wrong. He had worried for nothing. But as they neared the service door, a hotel manager emerged, face ashen. "Everyone, please step back. Emergency services are on their way." "How bad is it?" someone asked. The manager's hesitation said everything. She fell over the railing, down the entire stairwell. "Will she be okay?" Clara pressed, her voice tight with worry. The manager looked away. "The paramedics are coming, but it doesn't look good. There was a decorative iron post at the bottom. She landed. He didn't finish. He didn't need to." Clara pushed forward, identifying herself as Sasha's associate. After a brief argument, the manager let her through. Ethan followed in her wake, numb with the certainty of what he would find. The service stairwell was utilitarian. Concrete steps, metal railings, harsh fluorescent lighting. The metallic scent of blood hit him first, sharp, coppery, unmistakable. Then came other smells. The antiseptic tang of a medical kit opened nearby, the chemical odor of cleaning supplies stored in the stairwell, the collective sweat of panicked staff members. 14 floors down, at the very bottom of the stairwell, a hotel staff member knelt beside a crumpled form, applying pressure to a wound with a cloth that had already soaked through red. Ethan could just make out a splash of purple-streaked hair, a motionless hand with chipped black nail polish, a pair of broken glasses a few feet away. The moment his eyes fell on Sasha's body, every light in the stairwell flickered violently. A cold draft spiraled up from below, carrying the scent of old paper and something metallic, like freshly struck typewriter keys. No one else seemed to notice the temperature drop or the way the shadows in the corners suddenly deepened, as if reaching toward the broken figure on the floor. Clara turned to him, her face drained of color. "How did you know?" she whispered. "You tried to warn her about railings. How could you possibly have known?" The accusation in her tone was unmistakable. For the first time, Ethan saw fear in Clara's eyes, fear directed at him. Her hand, which had been reaching toward him in concern, suddenly withdrew. She took a small step back, creating distance between them. "Ethan," she whispered, her professional composure cracking, "what have you done?" In that moment, something flashed in Clara's eyes, a brief but unmistakable recognition, as if some terrible truth had occurred to her. She glanced at the black stains on his fingers, then back to his face with new wariness. She was too smart, too attuned to him after 15 years as his agent. If anyone would piece together the truth about the manuscript, it would be Clara. The realization brought a wave of panic. In the manuscript, the agent character, Charlotte Wells, eventually discovered the protagonist's theft and died with her jaw unhinged in a silent scream, ink leaking from her eyes. Not Clara, too, he thought. I can't let that happen. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. His knees gave way. The concrete steps rushed up to meet him, the impact sending shocks of pain up his thighs that he barely registered. From below came the sound of approaching sirens, their wail like a banshee's keen cutting through the night. Too late. Everyone was too late. I typed those words, Ethan thought, the realization spreading like poison through his veins. I transcribed her death with my own hands, claimed it as my creation. A sudden, desperate thought seized him. The manuscript, the original leather-bound book in Maslow's desk. If he destroyed it, would the curse end? Could he rush back to the estate, find the manuscript, and burn it before anyone else died? Or would that only accelerate the horror, as it had for Maslow himself? He could confess. Tell Clara everything, the theft, the manuscript's power, the terrible price of his ambition. But would she believe him? And even if she did, what could she possibly do to help? Looking down, he noticed the black stains beneath his fingernails had spread further, dark tendrils now extending past the first knuckle, branching like ink in water. When he touched one, pain shot up his arm, not physical, but something deeper, as if the corruption were reaching into his soul. His phone vibrated in his pocket. When he finally managed to check it, the screen displayed a message from an unknown number. Chapter 4 begins. A second message appeared below it. The critic has paid her price. The rival speaks next. When the radio host questions your words, his breath will turn to ink. Ethan's mind flashed to Daniel Price, who had recently started hosting a literary podcast, to the publicist at Harper, who'd mentioned scheduling him for NPR's Fresh Air. The manuscript wasn't just claiming Sasha, it was promising more deaths, more characters to feed the narrative. And with sickening clarity, Ethan realized that Sasha Lynn was only the first sacrifice the manuscript would demand. He was no longer just the thief of Maslow's work. He had become its accomplice, its vessel, perhaps even its prisoner. The weight of words, indeed, growing heavier with each page, each death, each step deeper into a narrative he neither controlled nor fully understood.